crash landing on an alien world. The soft hum of the celestial dawn was suddenly shattered by a deafening rumble as alarms blared through the corridors. Keenan Blake, a young but skilled engineer, jerked awake, his heart pounding in sync with the warning lights flashing overhead. He stumbled out of his bunk, barely managing to avoid a collision with a flustered crew member rushing past him. "What's going on?" Keenan shouted, but his words were swallowed by the panicked din around him. The spaceship lurched violently, tossing him against the wall as if it were the plaything of a monstrous, unseen force. Struggling to keep his balance, he caught a glimpse out of a viewport and felt his stomach drop. Outside, a swirling, ominous anomaly was drawing the ship toward it. There was no time to think, just to act. Keenan sprinted for the escape pods, the corridor twisting and tilting wildly as the ship struggled against the gravitational pull. Just as he reached the pod bay, an explosive jolt sent him sprawling to the floor. He barely had time to register the sensation of falling, of metal shattering around him, before darkness consumed him. When Keenan finally awoke, he was greeted by a scene of devastation. The once pristine celestial dawn lay in smoldering ruins around him, twisted metal and debris scattered across a barren, alien landscape under the harsh, unfamiliar sun. Pain flared in his head as he pushed a piece of metal off his chest, gasping for breath in the smoke-filled air. Alive, he thought, with a sense of disbelief. Somehow, he had survived the crash. He staggered to his feet, disoriented but functional. In the distance, rugged mountains loomed under alien constellations, and around him lay the shattered remnants of the ship. Keenan's gaze darted over the debris, searching for any sign of life. "Hello," he called, his voice hoarse, but only the eerie stillness of the planet replied. Then, a faint groan reached his ears. Keenan scrambled toward the sound, clambering over a pile of wreckage to find a figure pinned beneath a heavy fragment of metal. She was alien, her skin a shimmering silver, her eyes wide with pain. Her voice was barely a whisper, but she managed to utter, "Help." Without hesitation, Keenan wedged his shoulder under the metal and heaved with all his strength. The debris shifted just enough for her to pull free, and she managed to sit up, catching her breath. "Thank you," she said, her voice melodic despite the pain. "I am Lyra. Are there others?" Keenan nodded grimly. "Let's find them." As they sifted through the ruins, they discovered more survivors, a diverse group of 20 women, each from a different planet and race. Keenan realized that he was the only human among them, and strangely the only male. It turned out that the Celestial Dawn had been a pleasure cruise for women from various parts of the galaxy. The others, each with their unique characteristics, watched him with a mixture of relief and curiosity as he organized a search for supplies. Soon, a tall, green-skinned woman approached him, her muscular frame and severe expression marking her as a warrior. "I am Zara, the ship's security officer. What's our situation, human?" Keenan took a deep breath, surveying the faces around him. "We're in rough shape. No distress signal, no communication, and no supplies. This planet's atmosphere is breathable, but hostile. We need shelter and food. We'll head toward those mountains. They'll provide cover." Zara regarded him with an appraising look, and after a moment she nodded. "Then lead us, engineer." The group set off toward the mountains, struggling through the harsh terrain as the twin suns set. Keenan and Zara took turns helping those who were injured, the warriors from different species offering their strength where they could. It was a grueling journey, with the unending dust and wind biting into their skin. Just when Keenan began to think they might collapse from exhaustion, they reached a cluster of caves nestled in the foothills. "This will do for the night," Keenan announced, gesturing toward the caves. "Tomorrow, we'll explore further and set up a base. We need to prepare for anything this planet might throw at us." The women murmured in agreement, each finding a place to rest within the rocky alcoves. Keenan organized a watch rotation with Zara, who seemed to warm to his leadership, albeit with a hint of suspicion still in her eyes. As they settled in for the night, Keenan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, and he found his gaze meeting that of Lyra, the silver-skinned woman he had rescued. Her iridescent eyes gleamed in the dim light, and she gave him a small nod. As the first stars appeared in the alien sky, Keenan and Zara took their positions at the cave entrance, scanning the terrain for any signs of danger. They spoke in low voices, discussing the next day's plans, when a sound cut through the silence, a low, menacing growl echoing from the shadows. "Get inside," Keenan hissed, but it was too late. From the darkness emerged a hulking, monstrous figure, its eyes reflecting the light like twin burning embers. It was like nothing he had ever seen before, a creature with the head of a reptile, covered in scales, its muscular body sporting insect-like limbs and a whip-like tail. The creature let out a roar, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Keenan grabbed a broken metal rod from the ground, his grip tight as he prepared to defend the group. Zara stood beside him, her eyes fierce, her own weapon raised. The other women crowded at the mouth of the cave, watching in terror as the creature advanced. With a sudden, brutal swipe, the creature lunged at Keenan. He dodged just in time, swinging the rod with all his might and striking it across the snout. The beast reared back, momentarily stunned, and Zara leaped forward, slashing at its legs. Together, they fought with desperate fury, Keenan's blows landing with raw strength, Zara's attacks precise and deadly. Finally, with a screech of pain, the creature staggered back, its eyes narrowing in rage before it retreated into the shadows, leaving them gasping for breath. Keenan glanced over at Zara, who gave him a nod of approval. "You fight well, human," she said, her voice tinged with newfound respect. Keenan managed a wry smile. "We're going to need all the help we can get. Tomorrow, we start preparing defenses. This isn't over." As the group huddled inside the cave, trying to find warmth and reassurance, Keenan felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was the only human here, the only engineer, and somehow, he had become the protector of this unlikely group of survivors. The thought was overwhelming, but as he glanced around at the wary, grateful faces, he knew he couldn't let them down. Lyra approached him, a soft smile on her face. "Thank you for fighting for us, Keenan," she said, her voice gentle. Keenan shrugged, attempting to hide his own exhaustion. "Just doing what I can." Lyra's eyes softened. "We're grateful. All of us." As she turned away, Keenan settled down, closing his eyes for what little rest he could manage. Tomorrow, they would need every ounce of strength to face whatever new challenges lay ahead. This planet was dangerous, mysterious, and seemingly indifferent to their plight, but they would survive. The hunt for resources. The dawn on this alien world was as harsh and unforgiving as the night. Keenan Blake woke to the cold, dry air and a sky painted with strange colors from the rising suns. Beside him, Zara, the stoic security officer, was already awake, studying the terrain with sharp, focused eyes. Around them, the others stirred, their faces wary but determined. The bruises and cuts from the crash were beginning to heal, but their exhaustion ran deeper than the physical. It was the wariness of survival, the realization that no help was on the way. Keenan stood up, stretching his aching muscles, and gathered the group around him. "Listen up. We've got 3 main priorities today: water, food, and fortifying our camp. This planet isn't exactly friendly, so we'll have to rely on each other and be careful out there." He glanced at Zara, who nodded in agreement. "We'll split into teams," Zara added. "Keenan and I will lead the search parties for water and food. The rest of you will work on securing this cave, reinforce the entrance, set up watch shifts, and gather any materials you can find nearby that might be useful for defense." The women murmured in agreement, their expressions a mix of anxiety and resolve. Keenan was impressed by their determination. They may have been passengers on a luxury ship, but they had adapted quickly to the reality of survival. Keenan and Zara led the first team into the rugged terrain, following a small dried-up stream that wound through the rocky foothills. The air was dry, and dust clung to their skin and clothes. The planet's suns blazed down on them, creating an intense heat that forced them to conserve every ounce of energy. As they trekked, Keenan noticed a figure keeping pace beside him. Lyra, the silver-skinned telepath he'd saved the day before. She moved gracefully despite the rough terrain, her iridescent eyes scanning the surroundings with curiosity and a hint of worry. "Why didn't they come looking for us?" she asked, breaking the silence. "The ship had a distress signal, didn't it?" Keenan sighed, wiping the sweat from his brow. "It did, but whatever anomaly pulled us here must have thrown us off course. Even if someone's searching, it might take weeks or longer for them to find us. Until then, we have to survive on our own." Lyra's gaze softened and she nodded. "We'll survive. I believe in us." Ahead of them, Zara stopped abruptly, raising a hand to signal silence. Keenan followed her gaze and saw what had caught her attention. About 50 yards away, a patch of green, alien vegetation clung to the edges of the dried streambed. Small pools of murky water glistened among the rocks. It wasn't much, but it was the first sign of a possible water source they'd seen since the crash. "We'll need to test it for toxins," Keenan said, scanning the area, "and maybe find a way to purify it." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes focusing intently on the pools of water. She closed her eyes briefly, her skin pulsing faintly. "The water has traces of minerals and some unknown compounds, but nothing lethal," she murmured. "It's drinkable, at least for now." Keenan looked at her with surprise. "You can sense that?" Lyra smiled. "My people have a heightened awareness of chemical compositions. It's part of our survival." "Then let's fill up while we can," Zara said, her voice brisk. "But don't take too much. We'll need to ration it carefully." They gathered what they could, filling the few containers they had salvaged from the wreckage. As they worked, a strange, distant sound echoed from somewhere up the canyon, a deep, guttural growl that sent chills down their spines. The group froze, glancing at each other with wide eyes. "What was that?" one of the women whispered, her voice trembling. Keenan tightened his grip on the metal rod he had fashioned into a makeshift weapon. "I don't know, but we need to get back to camp, now." Back at the cave, the second team had been hard at work under the leadership of Ree, the medic, and Selani, a warrior with skin the color of deep violet. They had gathered rocks and debris to create a barricade at the entrance and even managed to fashion rudimentary weapons from the scraps of metal salvaged from the ship. As Keenan's team returned with the water, Ree stepped forward, her gaze assessing their wary expressions. "Did you find anything dangerous out there?" "Possibly," Zara replied, her face grim. "We heard something big. We should be prepared for whatever this planet throws at us." Selani, who had been reinforcing the barricade, gave Keenan a determined nod. "We'll defend this place, no matter what." Keenan felt a surge of pride and gratitude. These women, strangers only days before, were now united by their shared struggle for survival. Each one of them, with their unique backgrounds and skills, was proving invaluable in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Let's divide up the water," Keenan said. "We'll ration it carefully, but at least it's something to keep us going." The women took turns drinking, each of them grateful for the small relief the water offered. As they settled in, Laura approached Keenan, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for leading us," she said. "I know this isn't easy, but I believe we're all stronger together." Keenan managed a tired smile. "We have to be. It's us against this entire planet, and I don't plan on letting it win." As the day wore on, Keenan organized small groups to scout for edible plants and any signs of wildlife. They needed food, and trial and error seemed their only option. Laura joined him on the first scouting mission, using her chemical sensing ability to identify plants that might be safe to eat. While they searched, Keenan kept a wary eye on their surroundings. The landscape was barren, with twisted trees and strange, thorn-covered plants stretching toward the sky. The silence was eerie, broken only by the occasional, unsettling rumble in the distance. "Do you miss home?" Lara asked suddenly, her voice carrying a hint of nostalgia. Keenan paused, the question catching him off guard. Yeah, I never thought I'd be stranded light years away, fighting to survive, but here I am. Lyra smiled faintly, her gaze thoughtful. Home is a strange thing. Sometimes it's not a place, but the people you're with. Keenan nodded, feeling a sense of connection with her he hadn't expected. In this harsh, alien world, they were all each other had. As dusk fell, the scouting teams returned to the cave, bringing back a handful of strange fruits Lyra had deemed safe to eat. They built a small fire using bits of dried plants, and for the first time, the group sat together, sharing a meal, however meager. The firelight flickered across their faces, casting shadows and highlighting the determination in their eyes. But the peace was short-lived. Just as the stars began to appear in the night sky, an unearthly howl echoed through the canyon, louder and closer than before. The group sprang to their feet, hearts pounding as the sound drew nearer. Shadows moved at the edge of the firelight, and Keenan saw them. Two large, reptilian creatures with elongated bodies and eyes that gleamed with predatory intent. "Everyone inside," Keenan shouted, grabbing his metal rod. Zara and Selene flanked him, their makeshift weapons ready as the rest of the group scrambled into the cave. The creatures circled, their massive tails swishing through the dirt as they moved. Keenan tightened his grip, steeling himself for the fight. The creatures lunged, and Keenan swung his rod with all his strength, striking one across the snout. Zara followed suit, delivering a blow to the other creature's side. For a few harrowing moments, they fought side by side, each strike pushing the creatures back a little more. Finally, with a frustrated snarl, the beasts retreated, melting back into the shadows. Breathless, Keenan turned to the group, who watched him with a mixture of relief and awe. "We'll need to be on guard," he said. "This planet is full of surprises, and we can't afford to let our guard down." Ray stepped forward, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We'll survive, Keenan. We're stronger together." As the fire crackled and the night closed in around them, Keenan felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had each other, and as long as they stayed united, there was hope. The bond of survival. Morning arrived with an unsettling silence, broken only by the soft rustle of wind through the twisted, alien trees. The survivors emerged from the cave, faces drawn but resolute. They had survived another night in this hostile world, but Keenan Blake knew it was just the beginning. Food, water, shelter, and defense. They had the barest essentials now, but it wouldn't be enough for long. They needed more, and soon. Keenan gathered the group around him, his voice steady. "Today, we're going to focus on building stronger defenses and hunting for food. If last night was any indication, those creatures are only going to get bolder." Zara, the security officer, gave a grim nod. "We'll need more than just sticks and stones if we're going to keep those things at bay. We should find better materials." A hand rose in the crowd. It was Naira, a quiet, sharp-eyed woman with green skin and cat-like pupils. "I can scout for resources," she offered, her voice soft but confident. "I used to hunt back on my planet. I can sense movement and spot dangers before they're close." Keenan nodded, appreciating the volunteer spirit. "Naira, take Zara and a few others with you. Focus on anything that can reinforce our barricades or serve as weapons. The rest of us will keep working here to secure the cave and scavenge for any useful items from the wreckage." With their roles decided, the group split up. Keenan, Lyra, and a few others stayed behind to build up the fortifications around the cave. They stacked rocks, sharpened sticks, and even managed to weave some thorny vines into makeshift barriers. Every small improvement felt like a step toward survival, even if the odds remained daunting. Meanwhile, Nora's scouting team ventured deeper into the alien landscape. The terrain was strange and hostile, full of towering plants with twisted branches and thick, thorny undergrowth that clung to their clothes. But Nora led them with calm efficiency, her senses attuned to every sound and movement around them. At one point, she held up a hand, signaling the group to stop. There's something up ahead, she whispered. I can feel the vibrations in the ground, something large. They crept forward, peering through the brush until they saw it, a creature that resembled a massive, horned lizard, basking in the sun near a patch of flowering plants. Its scales glinted in shades of green and bronze, and it seemed oblivious to their presence. Do you think it's dangerous? Zara asked, gripping her weapon tightly. Nora shook her head. It doesn't look predatory. More likely, it's a herbivore. If we're careful, we might be able to avoid it. But as they watched, the creature shifted, revealing something behind it, a nest of eggs, each one the size of a human fist. Zara's eyes narrowed, an idea forming. Those eggs, she whispered, they could be a source of food. Nora looked uncertain. We don't know if they're safe to eat, and if we take them, we might anger the creature. Zara considered this, her expression serious. We'll take only a few, just enough to test. If they're edible, it could make a difference. With silent precision, they managed to gather a few eggs from the nest while the creature dozed. As they retreated, Nera cast one last glance at the sleeping beast, hoping their actions wouldn't come back to haunt them. Back at the cave, Keenan and Lyra were making progress. They had reinforced the barricade, using vines and stones to create a more stable barrier against the creatures that prowled the night. It wasn't perfect, but it was an improvement, and it gave them a small sense of security. Lyra, who had been working quietly by his side, finally spoke up. You're doing an incredible job, Keenan. I don't know how you're keeping it together. Keenan shrugged, brushing the dust from his hands. I don't really have a choice, do I? If we're going to survive, we all need to step up. She studied him, her iridescent eyes thoughtful. You've become more than just a leader to us. You're the heart of this group. You keep us grounded. Keenan felt a pang of embarrassment and tried to brush it off. I'm just trying to keep us alive. Anyone else would do the same. But Lyra shook her head. Not everyone would, Keenan. You're different. Her voice softened. You care. The intensity of her gaze made him feel self-conscious, but he was saved by the return of the scouting party. Nora and Zara carried the eggs carefully, showing them to Keenan and the others. Found these near a creature's nest, Zara said. We're not sure if they're safe to eat, but if they are... Keenan examined the eggs, their shells smooth and slightly translucent. We'll test them carefully. Boil one first and see how it affects us. If it's edible, this could be exactly what we need. As the day wore on, they set a pot over the fire, boiling one of the eggs to test its safety. The entire group gathered around, tension thick in the air as they waited. After some time, Keenan broke off a small piece and tasted it cautiously. The flavor was bland but tolerable, with no immediate ill effects. Encouraged, they shared the rest of the egg, each taking a small piece to test its effects. Hours passed, and no one reported any negative reactions. The discovery filled them with a renewed sense of hope. They had found a sustainable source of food, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. That night, they dined on the remaining eggs, their first real meal since the crash. It was a meager feast, but they ate with gratitude, feeling a renewed sense of strength. As the fire crackled, Keenan noticed the atmosphere had shifted. They were no longer just strangers forced together by circumstance. They were a team, bound by their shared struggle. The night wore on, and as the group settled into their makeshift beds, Keenan and Zara took the first watch. The alien landscape was eerie under the light of twin moons, casting long shadows over the barren ground. You handled yourself well today, Keenan said, breaking the silence. You're a natural leader. Zara's antennae twitched slightly, a hint of pride in her usually stern expression. Survival is all I know. My people are warriors, trained to face whatever comes our way. But this is different. She paused, her gaze distant. Back on my planet, survival was about strength, about fighting until there was nothing left to fight for. But here, it's different. I see something in these women, something I never thought I'd see. Cooperation, trust. It's strange, but not unwelcome. Keenan nodded, understanding her sentiment. We're all out of our element here, but maybe that's what makes us stronger. We're forced to rely on each other. A sound interrupted their conversation, a low growl from the shadows. Instantly alert, they gripped their weapons, scanning the darkness. From the edge of the firelight, a pair of eyes gleamed, watching them with a predatory hunger. "Get ready," Keenan whispered, motioning for Zara to move to the side. The creature lunged, a massive, feline-like predator with scales instead of fur, its teeth gleaming as it snarled. Keenan swung his rod, landing a blow across its side, but the creature barely flinched. Zara leaped forward, her weapon slashing through the air, but the beast was fast, dodging and circling around them. The commotion roused the others, and they scrambled to their feet, grabbing whatever makeshift weapons they had. Nora and Lyra joined the fray, their faces set with determination. Together, they drove the creature back, their combined strength overwhelming it. Finally, with a defeated snarl, the beast retreated, disappearing into the night. Breathless but triumphant, Keenan looked around at the others, feeling a surge of pride. They had protected each other, stood their ground, and survived another attack. As the dawn broke, Keenan and the others gathered, wary, but filled with a new sense of camaraderie. They were no longer just survivors clinging to life, they were becoming something more. A family forged in adversity, each of them stronger for the trials they had faced together. "We made it through the night," Keenan said, his voice carrying a sense of conviction. "We're going to make it through this. We're going to survive." The group nodded, their eyes reflecting a shared determination. This planet was relentless, but so were they. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. Discovering ancient secrets. The morning was crisp and quiet, the strange, pastel-colored sky casting a surreal glow over the barren landscape. The group awoke to a calm that felt almost deceptive. Every morning had brought new challenges and dangers, and Keenan couldn't shake the feeling that today would be no different. Still, the morale among the group was higher than it had been since the crash. They had managed to find water, food, and fend off nocturnal predators. But as Keenan looked around at their makeshift camp, he knew they couldn't keep living like this indefinitely. They needed something more, a sustainable way to not only survive but to thrive. Keenan called the group together after a quick breakfast of the alien eggs. "We've done well so far, but if we're going to stay here long-term, we need to explore further. We don't know what resources this planet might have, or if there's any shelter better suited for us." Zara, ever the pragmatist, nodded. "It's risky, but I agree. Staying put may be safe for now, but eventually, we'll need more than just this cave." Nara stepped forward, her cat-like eyes sharp and determined. "I'll lead a scouting team. If there are any hidden resources or safer shelters, we'll find them." Keenan, Zara, and a few others volunteered to go, while the rest would stay behind to continue fortifying the cave and keeping an eye on supplies. Lyra, the telepath, insisted on joining the scouting team, her intuition often proving invaluable in their explorations. They set off into the alien wilderness, moving cautiously through the dense patches of thorn-covered plants and twisted trees. The terrain was rough and unyielding, with jagged rocks and loose soil that shifted underfoot. As they climbed higher into the foothills, they began to notice strange formations in the rock, patterns etched into the stone that seemed too deliberate to be natural. "Do you see that?" Lyra asked, her gaze fixed on a tall rock wall covered in intricate carvings. "These look like symbols." Keenan approached the wall, running his fingers over the carvings. The symbols were unfamiliar, but they had an ancient, almost reverent quality to them. Spirals, geometric shapes, and patterns resembling constellations were etched deeply into the stone, as if someone or something had gone to great lengths to preserve them. Zara studied the symbols with a frown. Could this mean there was once intelligent life here? "Or there still is," Nora murmured, her voice laced with caution. "We should be careful. If there's an active civilization here, they might not welcome visitors. Keenan nodded, but his curiosity overrode his caution. This could be important. If there were inhabitants here, maybe they had resources or knowledge we can use. Let's document what we can. As they explored further, they discovered more signs of past civilization: stone pillars, half buried in the ground, and remnants of what appeared to be pathways led deeper into the mountains. The terrain grew more treacherous, but the pull of discovery kept them moving forward. They finally reached a clearing surrounded by towering cliffs. In the center stood a massive stone structure, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. It was a temple, or what was left of one, its weathered facade covered in the same symbols they'd seen on the rocks. The group approached the temple with awe and trepidation. Keenan felt a strange thrill as he studied the structure, his mind racing with possibilities. This was a discovery beyond anything they could have anticipated, a relic from an ancient civilization, forgotten and buried on this hostile planet. Lyra touched the stone wall, her eyes closed as if she were listening to something beyond their hearing. "There's a presence here," she whispered. "I can't explain it, but it feels alive, like it's waiting for something." Keenan looked at her, a chill running down his spine. "Are you saying there might be intelligence here? Some kind of residual energy?" Lyra nodded, her face thoughtful. "It's possible. My abilities aren't fully understood even among my own kind, but I feel a pull here, like this place holds knowledge we're meant to discover." They entered the temple cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the ancient hallways. Inside, they found a large central chamber, its ceiling high and arched, with light filtering through cracks in the stone above. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it lay a large crystal that pulsed faintly with a soft, blue light. Keenan felt drawn to it, as if the crystal held answers he'd been searching for. He approached slowly, feeling a strange connection as he reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, a flash of light filled the room, and a series of images flooded his mind. Stars, planets, and ancient, towering beings with forms that defied comprehension. He staggered back, gasping. The others rushed to his side, their faces filled with alarm. "Keenan, what happened?" Zara asked, steadying him. I saw something," he stammered, his heart racing. "Images, visions, beings, they were here once. And they were powerful. I think this planet was a place of knowledge, a sanctuary or a stronghold. But something happened, something catastrophic." Lyra's eyes were wide with wonder. "Do you think there could be more of these crystals? More places like this, with remnants of their knowledge?" Keenan nodded slowly, still reeling from the vision. "It's possible. If we can understand this place, it might help us survive here. Maybe even find a way home." The group spent hours exploring the temple, documenting every symbol, every artifact they could find. They discovered smaller crystals embedded in the walls, each one faintly glowing as if connected to the larger crystal on the pedestal. Keenan theorized that these crystals could be a power source or a communication network, but he had no way of knowing for sure. As they examined the symbols, Laura began to notice patterns that seemed to correspond to the constellations visible from their camp. She traced them with her fingers, piecing together a story told in stone. It's like they were mapping the stars, looking for something, she mused, or maybe trying to communicate with others across the galaxy. The more they studied, the more they felt a profound sense of reverence for whoever had built this place. They were a people of knowledge, explorers who had mapped the stars and harnessed the power of crystals. And yet, for all their achievements, they were gone, their civilization reduced to dust and memory. As dusk approached, Keenan realized they had to return to the cave. He took one last look at the temple, feeling a sense of loss and wonder. They had found something incredible, but it was only the beginning. There were still so many questions, so many mysteries left unanswered. They returned to camp just as night was falling, and the rest of the group gathered around, eager to hear what they had found. Keenan recounted their discovery, describing the temple, the crystal, and the visions he had seen. The group listened in awe, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and excitement. "Do you think these beings could still be out there?" someone asked, her voice trembling. Keenan shook his head. "I don't know. But whatever happened here, it was a long time ago. For now, all we can do is learn what we can from what they left behind." Zara crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. "If we can understand their technology, it might give us an edge. We could use it to defend ourselves, maybe even signal for help." Lyra nodded. "And if the crystals have power, maybe we can harness it, use it to survive here." The conversation continued late into the night, each member of the group adding their thoughts and theories. For the first time since the crash, they felt a spark of hope, a sense that they might not just survive, but find purpose in this strange world. The temple was a glimpse into something greater, a reminder that even in the harshest of places, knowledge and wonder could still be found. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, Keenan felt a new resolve take hold of him. They would explore the secrets of this planet, delve into the mysteries of the ancient civilization, and unlock the power hidden within the crystals. This planet was no longer just a prison. It was a place of discovery, a chance to forge a new path. But as he lay down to rest, he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Somewhere in the vast expanse of this alien world, something was watching, waiting. The ancient beings might be gone, but their legacy remained, and with it, a warning he could not yet understand. The awakening of ancient power. The next morning, Keenan felt a strange sense of urgency. The discovery of the temple and the crystal had changed everything. No longer was survival their sole objective. Now there was a mystery to unravel, a chance that this ancient civilization's secrets might help them not only survive, but thrive. Or, perhaps, find a way off this world. As he looked around at his fellow survivors, he saw the same spark in their eyes. They had been transformed from desperate castaways to explorers, bound by curiosity as much as necessity. Keenan assembled the group, going over the plan for the day. "We'll split into 2 teams again. Zara, I need you to lead a team to continue gathering supplies, especially food and water. We'll need to stay well stocked if we're going to continue exploring these ruins. Nora, Lyra, and I will return to the temple to map out more of the structure and try to understand the crystal's properties." Zara gave him a steady nod, her expression firm. "We'll do our part, but be careful, Keenan. We still don't know what that crystal is, or what it might be capable of." Keenan met her gaze, feeling a pang of gratitude for her caution. "I promise, we'll be careful." The journey back to the temple was quieter than the day before, each member of the scouting party lost in their thoughts. The closer they got, the stronger the pull Keenan felt toward the crystal. It was as if it were calling to him, urging him forward. Lyra seemed to sense it too. Her eyes had a faraway look, her usual calm replaced by a sense of wonder and reverence. When they finally arrived, the temple stood silent and imposing, shrouded in shadows as the early sunlight filtered through the surrounding cliffs. Keenan led the way, retracing their steps through the winding corridors until they reached the central chamber. The crystal on the pedestal was still there, pulsing faintly with a steady, rhythmic light that seemed to beat like a heart. "This crystal," Lyra murmured, her voice barely a whisper, "it's alive in some way. I can feel its presence, like it's aware of us." Keenan approached the pedestal, his hand hovering just above the crystal. The closer he got, the stronger the energy felt, warm, almost inviting. He remembered the visions he had seen the day before, flashes of ancient beings, celestial bodies, and unimaginable power. It was as if the crystal held the memories of an entire civilization. Nora moved to his side, her cat-like eyes narrowing as she examined the crystal. If this thing is as powerful as it seems, why was it left here? Why abandon something so valuable? Keenan shook his head, his gaze fixed on the glowing artifact. Maybe whatever happened to them was sudden, or maybe they wanted us to find it. Maybe they left it as a guide. The thought lingered as they continued their exploration, carefully documenting every symbol, every fragment of writing etched into the temple walls. Lara traced her fingers along the carvings, her eyes half closed as she concentrated. These symbols, they're a language, I think. Fragments of a story. I can feel impressions, images. They were searching for something, seeking answers among the stars. As they moved deeper into the temple, they found more crystals embedded in the walls, each one pulsing with the same soft blue glow. They formed a pattern that seemed to lead further into the heart of the temple, toward a smaller hidden chamber they hadn't noticed the day before. Inside this chamber, they found what appeared to be a control panel, ancient and worn, yet somehow still intact. Keenan stepped closer, examining the symbols carved into the surface. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch it, feeling a tingle of energy run through his fingers. I think this is a command center, he whispered, his heart pounding. If we can activate it, maybe we can learn more about this place. Maybe even find a way to communicate off-world. Nara raised an eyebrow, her skepticism apparent. Are you sure we should be messing with this? We don't know what kind of power we're dealing with. Keenan took a deep breath, steadying himself. We're here for a reason, Nora. This crystal, this temple, it's been preserved for who knows how long. I think we're meant to use it. Laura placed a reassuring hand on Nora's shoulder. Trust him. I can feel it too. This place holds answers, and we're meant to find them. With a nod of agreement, Keenan gently pressed his hand against the control panel. At first, nothing happened, but then the crystal in the central chamber flared, its light brightening until it filled the room. A low hum vibrated through the temple, and the walls seemed to come alive, the symbols glowing in response to the crystal's energy. Suddenly, a holographic image appeared in the center of the room, a map of the stars, rotating slowly in a breathtaking display. Keenan, Lyra, and Nera stared in awe as the image shifted, showing constellations, planets, and unfamiliar galaxies. It was a map of the universe, intricately detailed, with pathways marked in glowing lines. Laura's eyes widened as she traced one of the lines. These are travel routes, star paths. This civilization mapped out routes between galaxies. Keenan's mind raced as he took in the sheer scale of the map. This wasn't just a map. It was a navigation system, a guide through the cosmos. And if he could understand it, it might be their ticket to salvation. They spent hours in the temple, studying the map and attempting to decipher the symbols. The holographic display responded to Keenan's touch, shifting and changing as he navigated the ancient interface. But just as they began to make progress, the map flickered, and a warning symbol appeared, a jagged, ominous red icon pulsing at the edge of the display. Lyra shivered, her voice barely above a whisper. Something's wrong. This is a warning. I can feel it. Keenan hesitated, his fingers hovering over the display. The crystal's glow had intensified, casting a strange, eerie light across the room. He could sense the tension building, an energy that felt almost protective, as if the temple were reacting to an unseen threat. Then, with a sudden burst of light, the map vanished and the crystal's glow dimmed. The hum in the walls faded, leaving the room in silence. What happened? Nira asked, her voice tense. Keenan exhaled, feeling a strange mixture of awe and dread. I think we triggered something. A failsafe, maybe. This place, whatever it's protecting, isn't meant to be disturbed. It's guarding something powerful. The realization settled heavily over them. The temple, with all its secrets and wonders, wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a guardian, a sentinel left behind by an ancient civilization to protect their knowledge, and perhaps to keep others from accessing its power. They returned to the camp that night, their minds racing with questions. Keenan shared the details of their discovery with the others, his words carefully chosen as he recounted the map, the warning and the strange energy within the crystal. Zara listened intently, her gaze steady and unflinching. If this place is powerful as you say, we need to be careful. Power like that can be as dangerous as it is useful. Lyra nodded, her face thoughtful. I believe there's a reason we're here. This crystal, this temple, they are meant to be used, but only with caution and respect. The group spent the evening discussing their options, weighing the risks and potential rewards of delving deeper into the mysteries of the temple. Some were wary, while others felt a pull, a sense of purpose in exploring the ancient structure. The temple had given them hope, a possibility of something greater than mere survival. That night, as the group slept, Keenan lay awake, his mind replaying the images he'd seen in the crystal's visions. The ancient beings, the star paths, and the red warning symbol. It all felt connected, part of a larger puzzle he was only beginning to understand. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being guided, watched by forces beyond their comprehension. Just before dawn, Keenan felt a strange sensation, a warmth spreading through his chest, as if the crystal's energy was still with him, even outside the temple. He sat up, looking out over the alien landscape, and for a brief moment he saw something in the distance, a faint, pulsing light, like a beacon calling to him. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving him wondering if it had been real or a trick of his imagination. But he knew, deep down, that the crystal and the temple held secrets far beyond what they had seen so far. They would return to the temple. They had to. The path to survival, and perhaps a way home, lay hidden within its walls. And Keenan was determined to uncover every answer, every piece of knowledge that this forgotten civilization had left behind. As he watched the first rays of the twin suns break over the horizon, Keenan felt a renewed sense of purpose. This planet, once hostile and unforgiving, had become a place of possibility, of ancient power and hidden wisdom. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by their shared journey into the unknown.